In this video, I'm going to talk about rotary cutting. We're going to go over the mats, the cutters, and then also how to take care of them and how to use them. So let's get started. So here we have our rotary cutters, and you'll see I have two different kinds. They're both rotary cutters, but this one is just a less expensive one, more of a generic rotary cutter. This is definitely the better quality, but this one will definitely work in a pinch. So you'll see this is the blade part, and I know it looks exactly like a pizza cutter, but if Leonardo comes over and he needs to borrow something to cut his pizza, don't let him use this. It's very sharp and it's meant only for fabric. So what we're going to do is you're going to push this little button here. You're going to push it down, and you'll see that the blade is now exposed. There's a little button here which releases the blade back into the cutter, and now it's not exposed right here. For this one here, you're going to pull it back and see how it pops out right there, and then I'm going to push it in order to cover it again. I'm just going to move this one out of the way, and we're going to focus on this one. Now the one thing you have to know about these, the blades are extremely sharp. Once you cut something and you're like this and you're done, even if you're just putting it down for a second, push the button and release it. Never grab it from over here because it will cut you, and anybody who's used these for an extensive amount of time has probably accidentally cut themselves. I know I have. So you always want to make sure you never leave this laying around with the blade exposed. Just get in the habit of pushing this button as soon as you make your cut and you're done. Also, the nice thing about rotary cutters is that when your blade starts to get dull, and like scissors, you're never going to want to use paper or anything else but fabric to cut it, so it'll stay sharp for a while. But sometimes they do start getting dull and stuff. Instead of buying a new cutter, you can just replace the blades. Now this one is really hard to see, but it'll say 45 mm. That's the size of the blade that you'll need to buy. If you go in the fabric store where these are sold, you'll see a bunch of blades. On the back, there's a screw. You just undo the screw, and you lift it out like that, and there's the blade. So you could just put a new one in, and you put it back, screw it, and there you are. And then you're good to go with your rotary cutter. If you're going to be using the rotary cutter, you're definitely going to need to get a rotary cutting mat. Never just start cutting directly on your table, because you'll definitely start getting scratches in your table from the blade, and you also start dulling the blade that way. So the nice thing about these mats is that they're self-healing. They're specifically made to use with the cutter, so you're not going to get large gashes in them. They're really nice, but you're going to need to take really good care of them. Always store your mat flat. Never roll it up or put it on its side or anything like that, because it'll start taking that shape, and then you'll never get it like this again. Never have it exposed to the sun if you're going to be storing it for long lengths of time. Because the sun will start to warp the plastic, and you just want it to stay as nice as possible for as long as possible. I've had this mat for over 10 years, so you can see it's still in really great shape. So you just really want to take good care of your stuff so you can continue to use them and enjoy them. So I'm now going to show you how to use the rotary cutter. We're going to cut out strips out of this fabric here, and I have my little plastic ruler, which makes it nice that I can line it up and then use my rotary cutter to follow right along the ledge here. So it just makes it really neat to use. So here's my fabric. It's actually folded in quarters, so it's folded in half, then folded a half again, just so it doesn't go past the edge of my ruler here. And what I'm gonna do is on the bottom fold here, I'm going to line it up on this yellow line right here. This is so that I know that it's straight. Each one of these big lines is an inch. So I'm going to line it a little bit past one of these vertical lines here. And this is because it's not perfectly straight, and you always want to start with a straight edge. So I'm going to line it up, the edge of this ruler, with that line. And so now all this fabric is hanging off. I'm going to cut that off, and then we're going to start with a nice clean edge. So I have my rotary cutter. I'm going to push it down to expose the blade. And when you're cutting, I think these are meant to be cut in your right hand. This is so the blade is as close to possible with the edge of your ruler here, so it can get as close to that as possible. If I cut over here, because of this part, it just makes it a little bit difficult. So it's always best to do it in your right hand and to hold this in your left-handed. So I'm just going to start at the end. And you're going to press down pretty hard, but not so hard that you lose control. And see how that just cuts that there? And you can always just tell where maybe it didn't quite go down far enough. There. So now I have a clean edge there that I can start. What's nice about rotary cutting is it's perfect if you're doing something like quilting and you need a lot of strips or squares or whatever. So if I needed to do a 2-inch strip, all I need to do, so here's the beginning, and I'm going to go 1, 2, so that's 2 inches there. So now I'm going to line up my ruler, and you can either line it up with your vertical line here, or the bottom edge can be perfectly lined up with my bottom line here, so that way I know it's perfectly straight. I'm going to hold it with my left hand. I'm going to expose the blade. There. So there's one perfectly straight edge. Now if I needed to make a square, just line this up with one of these lines down here so I know it's straight. And this end is straight, but if it wasn't, I can always square it. I'm going to put it at my 2-inch mark. And it's definitely always easy to go through one layer than going through 4. I'd probably say 4 layers is the maximum that you're going to want to do. So there's one square. But if you had to do a bunch of them, this is the trick. Just keep that folded up. And then I could just do the same thing, and that way I'll get 2 squares with one cut. Or I can do it in 4s and then get 4 squares in one cut. So that just makes it really quick and easy. That's why using a rotary cutter and the mat and ruler is really nice to do for if you're doing quilting or something that requires a bunch of straight edges. You can also use your rotary cutter for cutting out pieces from a pattern. Usually that's good for fabrics like knits or slippery fabric, just because you don't have to worry about putting in pins and then accidentally stretching your fabric. So you can lay it nice and flat and just cut from above and hopefully get it as accurate as possible. So here's my knit fabric. I have it folded in half, and I'm going to take my pattern piece here. This part goes on the fold for this particular pattern because I'm making a tank top here. Alright, so once it's lined up, and you want to get your pattern piece as smooth as possible, they have weights that you can buy that's also in the rotary cutting section. But if you don't want to spend the money like me, you just use cans like that. So once it's lined up, you're going to put your can on. And you don't want it too close to the edge because you don't want it to get in your way of cutting. And then I'm going to put another one down here. Like that. So you're going to now take your cutter, and this is really good if you have steady hands, and you're just going to follow right outside the line here. So we're going to get closer so you'll be able to see that in action. So I'm going to go ahead and start cutting this. The nice thing about using a rotary cutter for these type of patterns is you have a nice gradual curve right here. If you have something that's really intricate, like it's really curvy, then it's probably best to use a smaller rotary cutter or just to use your scissors, because they can't really get into really tight areas very easily. So I move my cans so they're closer together because I'm going to do this line right here. And as I'm moving along, I can just keep moving my cans because I want to make sure that it's going to hold the tissue paper down, and I don't really want to get into the habit of putting my finger in here, because if I slip, I'm going to just slice off my finger or cut it very badly. So the trick is you're going to press down as you're cutting and go very slowly, because unlike the ruler, you don't have that edge to help guide you. You kind of have to just do it freehand. And if you do it fast, you're not going to have a lot of control here. So they're starting to come undone. I just need to do this little edge right here. There we go. See how that's a nice clean edge there? So now I just have to move my can down, and I'm just going to continue going till I finish cutting out my pattern piece.